cooperative than Aaron Hernandez. You're listening to 87 Live on 87 Sports Fans Radio. I am one of your illustrious hosts, Keith Grieve.
And I'm Steve Taylor, folks. And I gotta say, after that poignant music with the tragic news from today that James Gandolfini has passed, you start the show with that god-awful Hernandez joke.
Why? It wasn't god-awful. I was so thankful that he provided me with very little work to do to come up with my little creative one-line intro to the show.
At least you came up with an intro this week. I do give you credit on that.
So as you can tell, the music playing, but due to the tragic news that James Gandolfini has passed, forever known to millions as Tony Soprano. Massive heart attack at the age of 51. Way too early.
Yeah. But you know what? For him, I think there are a few places in the world that he would have wanted to pass, like than in Italy. Like he passed on vacation in Italy. He was probably enjoying himself. Tragic news is that his baby daughter was just born in October, so he had a brand new baby girl, and now he's gone from the world, which that's really awful. And he was great, a lot of great movies, but of course The Sopranos is what he's gonna be remembered by, and great talent. It's too bad.
And a reminder that this and every broadcast is brought to you by CG Imaging, cg-imaging.com, virtually creating reality. So, as we are this will definitely be our last show with the NBA playoffs still underway. Game 6 last night, we'll get into, everyone's calling it probably, I've seen so many tweets today about that was the best sporting event they ever watched. And I don't know if that's going a little bit overboard yet. I mean, it certainly was very entertaining. It has to be up there on the list, and we'll get into our lists a little bit later. It just seems that this series, before we get into it, I want to make a comment. It just seems that this series has generated very polarizing remarks from everybody, depending, it doesn't matter what outlet, like First Take asking if Popovich should rest players last night, which is just completely ridiculous. Yeah. I saw another Twitter comment saying that Danny Green really wasn't a difference maker in this series. I'm like, what are you people watching? Yeah. So it's, you know what I mean? There's no safe takes. It's either on one end or the other. So why wouldn't last night be from one spectrum to the other? And in a matter of, literally seconds. It seemed like it happened, the snap of a finger. But literally, matter of seconds, maybe a minute and a half of game time. And not only did they wheel the Larry O'Brien trophy back behind closed doors, but put it on ice for another 2 days. Yeah. What's your reaction to last night?
To me, I would almost agree with folks that were saying it was one of the best just sports championship games, just by not only the performances, but the emotion of it was unbelievable. And you get a lot of these games that possibly go into extra time, either extra innings of baseball, overtime in football, overtime in basketball. I don't give a damn about hockey. But normally the finales are not as close as it was. Because in overtime, there was one block shot by Chris Bosh away from it being tied and sent into double overtime. So it was such an emotionally draining finale. That last 30 seconds in overtime, or 30 seconds in regulation, and then the entire overtime period was unreal. It was close. It was physically, emotionally. For those players, you just saw them in the press conferences after the game. They were done. They had nothing left. Like, I'm going to be interested to see who rebounds better from And a lot of people are going to say the emotional toll it's going to take, which, I mean, on a team like San Antonio, you would hope that they're enough of a veteran team that they're not going to have as much of a lull going into Game 7. But just physically, I mean, LeBron James played 50 minutes in last night's game. That's insane. And then you have players like Duncan, who's not getting any younger. He played 44 minutes, and then Parker, who has a bad hamstring, he played 43 minutes. How are these players going to be able to rebound with a day and a half rest going into Game 7? That's going to be the big thing I'm going to keep my eye on. Because, I mean, I know LeBron is 28 years old, but to play 50 minutes, a really tough 50 minutes of a game is going to drain you at any age. It doesn't matter how old you are. So to me, that's going to be a major thing. But, I mean, it was a great game. It was an absolutely phenomenal game.
What do you think the difference maker was last night?
I think the difference maker was youth. And what I mean by that is really in that game, Tony Parker did not have a good game. I mean, he shot 6 for 23. He did give out 8 assists, but he did not have a good game. And no one, minus Kawhi Leonard, who was in the right place at the right time on a couple plays, but Tim Duncan was in the first half, he had one of the best first halves, I think, in any NBA playoff game, finals, playoff, any NBA game, period, in history. I mean, he had, 25 points, and he had double-digit rebounds in the first half. I mean, he was giving it his all, and then he just hit a wall in the second half because he is, 38 years old, and he's been playing for 18 seasons in the NBA. And the younger, faster Miami Heat was able to take a decent first half and turn it into a decent second half up until the Incredible Hulk moment, I like to call it. Because LeBron James in the first 3.5 quarters was Bill Bixby. He was Bruce Banner, was doing okay, was, I have a beef about him that I'll bring up later. But he was being average. And then Ginobili elbowed him in the throat. And it was like you took David Banner and he turned into your Incredible Hulk. Because after he got elbowed in the throat, he just went nuts. Defensively, offensively, passing the ball. And what turned out to be a mediocre game, and I think if you looked at his game overall, you would say he did good, but not great. But he still had a 32-point triple-double. But to me, that was really the main turning point. It's like he was kind of a whiny baby the whole game, and it really kind of pissed me off. But then he finally manned up, and it took Ginobili elbowing him in the throat, and as soon as that happened, it's like a switch went off. And really, LeBron James single-handedly brought Miami back in that fourth quarter. There were some big shots by other players, but they were mainly because the Spurs had to start double teaming James. Like, he was insane. And that, I mean, he had 16 points in the fourth quarter, and that was really the second half of the fourth quarter because he even started the fourth quarter a little bit shaky. And I think one of the biggest turning points was, and one of the biggest beefs I had about games 4 and 5 for Spoelstra, to me, Chris Anderson, Birdman, has much more of an impact than Haslam. Mainly because, I mean, he only had 1 point, 4 rebounds, and 3 steals. But when they put him in the game, and it was LeBron and Birdman and, oh my God, I want to say it was Mike Miller, Battier, and Ray Allen. He just went, I mean, Birdman gave them that extra energy. Like, he's not a great player. I will stand by the fact that I don't think he's a great player, but he has that crazy defensive and offensive energy that kind of boosted the team up. So I think, to me, those are like the two main turning points in that game.
So you guys saw something different as far as Duncan's lack of production in the second half, or even more precisely the fourth quarter. Eric Spoelstra rope-a-doped the San Antonio Spurs. And I don't know how many. I haven't heard a lot of people. I've heard some people talk about it. In the fourth quarter, they swarmed double teams at Tim Duncan like we have not seen in this series. And credit them for doing that, because once they started doing that, San Antonio's offense had absolutely no flow. You had Manu Ginobili reverting back to the Manu Ginobili of games 1 through 4.
Oh, he was awful.
Oh my God, he had 8 turnovers and 9 points. Okay,
yeah.
It was just ridiculous. Kawhi Leonard, was his usual steady self, but didn't light the world on fire by any means. But Tony Parker shooting 6 of 23, and then Danny Green 1 of 7 total, 1 of 5 from behind the arc. There was no second option last night. I can't consider Kawhi Leonard a second option.
Yeah, no, not at all.
But he was the second leading scorer on the Spurs. But after Duncan, there was nobody else last night, and it didn't really start to make an impact until the fourth quarter, because that's when the Heat started getting hot. And whether it was the elbow to the throat or losing the headband, I don't think he should ever wear that damn headband again, personally. But I think that it was more had to do with Miami's defensive strategy being tweaked at just the right time. And LeBron, everyone's making a big deal about his stat line, scoring 32 and having 10 rebounds and 11 assists, and how that puts him up with, rarefied air. There's only very few people that have done that as many, triple-double in the playoffs as many times as he has. And that's all great and all, but he took 50 minutes to do it, which credit him for being out there for 50 minutes, because I could not do that. A lot of players can't do that. But he had 6 turnovers.
Yeah.
And 2 of them were pretty late in the game. One of them, god-awful. Danny Green just barely reached in and managed to poke the ball. And then he went and he was pissing and moaning to the referees.
Yeah, that to me, I was disgusted with that.
You're LeBron James. You get more phony calls thrown your way simply by being the best player in the league. You can't be looking for those ticky-tack calls in the closing moments of a finals clinching game. On the other end, when Ginobili, again, we were talking before that we went on the air about some of the decisions that Greg Popovich made. When they had a chance, I can't believe they didn't call a timeout. And instead, Ginobili dribbles the length of the floor, takes an out-of-control drive to the hoop where he took 3 steps and was hoping for a bailout foul.
Yeah.
The refs in that instance correctly swallowed the whistle.
Exactly.
Because you can't make that call in that situation at that time, especially when it was a blatant travel.
Yeah, and watching that in slow motion, Ray Allen knocked the ball out with his first swipe and then hit his arm with the second one. So it's like, it wasn't even a foul per se. Before, you're right though, the travel would have negated it all, anyways. So
it's a combination of everything falling apart at the wrong time, and things just coming together just barely enough for the Heat. And I said in my piece that I wrote on 87sportsfans.com today that, and I don't think I'm exaggerating, LeBron's legacy was saved. His whole legacy was saved by that Chris Bosh offensive rebound and the pass to Ray Allen in the corner to hit the 3 to send the game to overtime. Because if Bosh doesn't get that rebound or Allen misses that 3 and the Spurs are celebrating on Miami's home floor last night, well, then all we're talking about today is the decision again.
Yeah.
And why no superstar should ever do anything like that again, because it's not worth all the hubbub.
Yeah. But I'll tell you, something that's happened in this series and I am a LeBron James fan because I think he brings a lot of positives to the NBA as far as a role model, and he is crazy talented. But he, to me, in this series, has tarnished his legacy, in my eyes, as bad with events as bad as the decision. Because in this series, especially last night, now, there are going to be players, every player argues a call. I don't think there's one foul call where a player's like, oh, yeah, you're 100% right, I fouled him, or somebody gets hit on the arm and they don't argue it. Everyone's going to argue a little bit. But for somebody of his stature and his talent and his ability to sit on the floor crying to the ref as the rest of the game moves down to the other end of the court and San Antonio gets easy shots because the best defender and player on the floor is sitting on the floor like a little child complaining. And then there was another time he was walking down the floor because he was pouting because he didn't get a foul call. That to me is, there's no excuse. There's absolutely no excuse. It was despicable. It was disgusting. And I was ashamed to be a basketball fan watching that. Because, a lot of the people who I know who are not basketball fans, one of their biggest gripes about the NBA is, they're all babies. They're always getting these little stupid fouls and they're always crying. And I'm standing up. I always stand up for them, say, it's a much more physical game than you know. And for those of you that don't play, it's much more difficult. But watching LeBron do that yesterday, I was disgusted. I was absolutely disgusted. And like I said, he dropped a notch in my book watching that. Regardless of his stat line, he took a huge step back with me on that.
All right. I agree. I think that being the best player in the league is he doesn't have that it factor that Jordan had, that Magic had, and both of them would get in the referee's ear, but I don't remember any of those guys, obviously not Larry Bird, but Magic, Michael, Kobe does it from time to time, but where they just stay at the other end of the court.
Yeah.
And just piss and moan about a foul and let the play go on without him. And then they got to hurry up. And LeBron usually, ironically, makes some kind of play from behind in those instances. But last night, I'm telling you, if Bosh does not get that rebound and Allen doesn't hit that three, especially with LeBron, missing that 1-3 late in the game, he did come back and get redemption and hit the second one. Yes, I know. But we're all asking questions about, where this team goes. And if you ask me, last night, the real key to it all was Mario Chalmers. Because with the game that he played, shooting 7 of 11, if Mario Chalmers in games 4 and 5 was abysmal. Yeah. Abysmal. If he comes out and shoots like that in this game, then they don't come back. It's the deficit would be too much to come back from.
And there's something about him, though.
I know.
Something about him that just, to me, screams a juvenile, just also crybaby, immature player. I don't know what it is. I watch him play, and I watch some of the decisions he makes, and I think he is a detriment to that team at point guard. And like you said, I think a lot of that goes to how poorly he did in 4 and 5. Because in Game 4 and Game 5, they had no point guard play. The Miami Heat had 0. It's as if they didn't have a point guard on their staff. I mean, how many teams can win championships saying that?
Right.
But, no, I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. I think if it wasn't for, and I will say that Ray Allen's shot is one of the greatest clutch baskets ever in the NBA, in a playoff and where that was just, I've heard the term a million times today, that was pure ice water in his veins. Like, he was so dialed in, he was not going to miss that shot. It was unbelievable. And if it wasn't for him, I agree. I think LeBron James would have just been torn up, and I would have been right there tearing them up along with everybody else.
Well, and then you start to ask questions. What's this team really doing if they're not winning championships? Why are you tying up all this salary in 3 players?
Yeah.
When
and I hope the talk about trading Bosh stops, because really, Bosh has not had the best series, but Eric Spoelstra has said that he thinks he is one of the most key components, because when they need, like what he did last night, because not only did he have the big offensive rebound and assist to get them to overtime, but then he had those 2 huge blocks in overtime on Parker and on Green. If it's not for those plays, I mean, they're not winning the championship. So yeah, he kind of dialed it in for the first 40 plus minutes of the game. But then when they needed somebody to step up, he was actually the one that stepped up, which surprised the hell out of me.
I think if they win tomorrow night, there's no way that you can really break up this 3. You're listening to 87 Live on 87 Sports Fans Radio. And now I'm looking at the stream, and we were off the air for a little bit there. So let's try to get this all figured out. I'll try to get Steve-O back, and we'll be back in a few minutes, folks. Once again, 87 Live on 87 Sports Fans Radio.
We don't have to sacrifice. We don't have to change our ways. Just keep rolling on and on. Sleep through days and days and days. We work all day and nothing gets done. We don't really care, just passing time. We pass the days, the months, the years. We cash our checks, we lose our souls, we hide our tears. My brain is getting numb, my heart is getting weak, my body's getting old. I'm having trouble speaking, and my eyes can't make believe that they still see. I point to all of this, I'm walking away, I'm leaving no regrets. The end begins today, because this inconsequential life, it's killing me. It's killing me. Time keeps rolling like a snowball, faster and faster as it goes downhill. The youth you thought would never end it all. Oh, how you wish you could make the time stand still. And all the dreams you have protected, you tuck them away up on a shelf. Well, it seems they felt neglected and ran off with somebody else. My brain is getting numb, my heart is getting weak, my body's getting old. I'm having trouble speaking, and my eyes can't make believe that they still see. I point to all of this, I'm walking away, I'm leaving no regrets. The end begins today, because this inconsequential life, it's killing me. Feels like I'm lost with no direction. Feels like I'm blowing in the wind, and this is the end. My brain is getting numb, my heart is getting weak, my body's getting old. I'm having trouble speaking. And my eyes can't make believe that they still say I'm going to all of this. I'm walking away. I'm leaving no regrets. The end begins today. Because this inconsequential life, it's killing me. It's killing me. Yeah, it's killing me. It's killing me.
If I was a snake and you were a mouse, would you run from me? Should we stay forever apart? Would you make me free? I don't really care if you love me. Hold my heart at last. I don't really care if you need me. I should leave you fast. If I was a snake, I would be so wise. Never let you in. Would my life be terribly nice? Would my poison kill? I don't really care if you love me. Hold my heart at last. I don't really care if you need me. I should leave you fast. I should leave you I don't really care if you love me. Hold my heart at last. I don't really care if you need me. I should leave you fast. I should leave you fast, 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 fast. I should leave you fast.
Welcome back to 87 Live. It would not be one of our shows if we didn't have a little kind of technical glitch.
Technical difficulties.
I reconnected with Mr. Taylor. Don't worry, no reason to call the FBI. Call out an APB. We'll get back onto what we were talking about in the NBA. And I said that with the NBA Finals, and I said that if they were to lose tomorrow night, I said if they win tomorrow night, then I don't see that you can make a case for breaking up the Big Three coming off back-to-back championships.
Correct.
But if they lose, then if you're asking me to pick which one is on his way out, I'd have to say Dwayne Wade. And from no other standpoint is just, and I know he's hurt, I know he's battling injuries, and especially in the knee, when you play that position, you know, you need your knees, obviously. But there was no flow last night with Dwayne Wade and LeBron James.
No.
Now, then they could cruise through another 82-game regular season and figure it out and win another 62 games, 65 games, whatever we expect of them. But when it comes down to the playoffs and it's all about execution and matchups, especially in the finals, there has been nothing going on with the two of them on the floor, really. Nothing that would really blow your hair back. So, with that being said, Bosh is not your typical post player. He doesn't like to be in the middle. He shies away from contact most times. He's more of a when he's a center, he's more like a European center playing away from the basket, able to hit 12 to 15-foot jump shots. But if LeBron is the perimeter, then you got to balance that with some kind of post player. And if you remember correctly, and you and I were on the air in one of our earlier versions of this program, the program. And I said that when this whole decision went down, the three of them were going to play together, and Dwayne Wade and LeBron James have too similar of a style. They're not the same. LeBron is just much more physical because he can be. He's bigger than everybody else, pretty much at his position. But their game is going to the basket. Wade's a better jump shooter than LeBron, but Wade needs to put the ball on the floor too. So their games don't really complement each other. So if they lose tomorrow night and changes are made, if Miami Pat Riley deems that they need to shake it up a little bit, I don't think it's Bosh and I don't think it's Chalmers. I think you're going to see Dwayne Wade be the one out the door.
See, I don't know if they can do that though. I mean, that's kind of like the discussion we've had in the past about Kobe and his current situation with the Lakers. Dwayne Wade is as important to the Miami Heat and as much of the face of the Heat as Kobe is with the Lakers, in my opinion. Because, yeah, LeBron's the new guy and he's the best player on the team now, but I think everyone in Miami, including the ownership, remembers that their first title came on the shoulders pretty much by himself, even though Shaq was on the team, of Dwayne Wade. Like, he's given everything to that team, his body, his everything, pretty much. Every ounce of his talent has been given to that team. So, I mean, if they got rid of him, I think it would be as much of a controversy as if the Lakers got rid of Kobe. I just don't think you can do it.
See, I don't know. I mean, a controversy, what? These are the same fans that were leaving before the game was over and then banging on doors and being all upset that they couldn't get back in, to the point where law enforcement had to get involved. I don't really think that they have that kind of loyalty.
See, I don't think you can take what a couple hundred douchebags did and call them really. I don't think those were the real fans. Those were the people that were like, oh, there's a championship basketball game. Let's go see how many touchdowns they can score, just so they can get their face on the camera. You know what I mean?
Oh, you probably got a point there.
So I can't look at them as fans. I mean, no fan. I'm sorry. And I love what Chris Bosh said. He said today that those people, if they have tickets to Game 7, they should just stay home. Which is awesome.
Totally agree.
Yeah, that was awful. And it was hilarious watching them getting told they can't come back in. That was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen.
So, but here's the thing. If you're going to make the decision to leave early, then go. Then go. If you're out the building and you hear that it's going to overtime, find a bar somewhere. You made the decision to go. Don't go there and start banging on the door acting like a fool. You knew the rules. You knew that once you left, you weren't going to be able to come back in the building. So, just because it's overtime, you think it's a special circumstance? No, you're the idiot that left. First of all, who's got that kind of money to throw around where you're leaving an NBA Finals game before it's over? Those seats are so damn expensive.
Yeah, seriously. So I don't know. I think it was ridiculous. I mean, those kind of fans belong in Atlanta, not in Miami.
No, the fans in Atlanta don't even show up at all.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So let's just keep it, straight here. So back to the game now. Greg Popovich made some, in my mind, pretty questionable decisions down the stretch there. Number one that I want to talk about is pulling Tim Duncan off the floor in the closing minutes so that he could have a smaller lineup that could conceivably switch on all pick and rolls. My personal take, is that you don't, in that situation, being a finals clinching, championship clinching game, clinching moment, minute, 2 minutes to go in the game, I'm not pulling any Hall of Fame players off the floor. You ride the horses that got you there, and let the chips fall where they may. That's just how I feel. What's your take?
See, from an armchair quarterback, I agree. It didn't make sense that you're going to take a team that has been shooting threes so poorly as Miami and not put in somebody that can get an offensive rebound or defensive rebound, because chances are Miami's going to miss, and they did. They got second chance shots on both of their last threes, and they made the second ones. If you had Tim Duncan in to rebound on one of those, they would not have gotten the second chance. But I also agree with, there was a commentator today who said, it's easy for us to say, but it'd be the same as going into, like somebody did a neurosurgery and going in and being like, I don't like how you did that, and not having any idea what we're talking about because we have no idea actually how to coach in the NBA. So, like, to me, Greg Popovich is a smart guy. He knows what he's doing. And, you could say the same in most baseball games when they pull a starting pitcher who hasn't given up a hit to put in somebody, to put in a righty to pitch to a lefty, and he gives up a home run. It's one of those things that you're like, wow, that was really stupid to do. But if you look back in hindsight, maybe it was by the book the right call to make at that point. So as much as I agree, I also can kind of see, hey, you know what? Maybe Popovich saw something that we didn't. So I am going to give him the benefit of the doubt just because he is, in what we discussed last week, one of the top 5 best coaches ever in NBA history. So,
reaction coming in over Twitter. Brian tweets, how did that small lineup work for the Indiana Pacers? They pulled Hibbert and lost, which is a pretty valid point, but different kind of play.
Yeah.
But
and you know what? And a lot of people are saying, how come the coach of Indiana got absolutely crucified, and Popovich has just had a few questions asked him, but nowhere near the same kind of level?
Well, because Frank Vogel is Frank Vogel and Greg Popovich is Greg freaking Popovich. We went through this last week. It shouldn't become as a surprise to no one that Popovich isn't getting raked over the coals, because Greg Popovich has proven time and time again that he actually does know what he's doing.
Yes.
And so from that standpoint, it should come as a shock to no one that he's not getting questioned like Vogel. The Indiana Pacers were a team that had something to prove. The Spurs have been here before, so if there's a questionable move done by the coaching, I understand that. I have more faith in Popovich's reasoning than I do in Vogel's, just from the fact that the man can still blind me with his rings. So I will go...
Kiss the ring, baby.
Yeah, exactly. And Brian Brian's getting active in the tweeting. It points the same to me, at least. He are a smallish team. Good big men give them issues. Well, yeah. Okay. But
to also stick to something that I've said many times, and some of the commentators during, I know at least Game 5 and Game 6, they mentioned, the league is changing, though. And it's not the big man's league anymore. It's the, 6'8", 6'9" guy are now the big men. The actual, you can rebound, kind of like the LeBron, and I would have to even say like the Chris Bosh's and Tim Duncan's, who are not technically centers, but they're the more, I don't even know the best way to say it. They're just a little more fluid. They're not just static underneath the basket.
Athletic. They're athletic.
What's that?
They're athletic.
I was going to say athletic, but I look at Dwight Howard. He's the typical big man who's very athletic, but he doesn't have the ability to move more than 10 feet from the basket and be effective.
Anybody who's 750 pounds is athletic to begin with, but the smaller, more agile athlete, Duncan is who Duncan is and will be a Hall of Famer one day. If I'm at that moment, I'm there and figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guarantee you next game, he's not going to be on the bench.
I would have kept him in there. I would have run a 3-2 zone. That's just me, though.
Yeah. That's just me.
And, Brian, if you're going to tweet repeatedly, you might as well call in. Okay. Area code 585-633-7487. That number again, 585-633-7487. Let's take another quick break, catch our breath, and when we get back in, we'll do a Game 7 preview. What the Spurs and Heat have to do and don't do. And then also get to our top 5 sports championship games that we've witnessed. You're listening to 87 Live on 87sportsfans.com.
Show me what you got and tell me what to do. If you don't, you bet yourself up my love too. Think you had to make me with me, but whatever. Religion and belief is not a test. If I ask you to forgive me, you say yes. Don't be shy to touch my son to young. It's a strange skin for you when I'm around. My intentions, but you should be my guest. So when you ask me to forget you, I say yes. Tell me what you're gonna do. Tell me what you're gonna do. It feels you, so you, so you, baby. Tell me what you're gonna do. Tell me what you're gonna do. Make love to you. I just wanna hang around and look at you, especially as a twisted point of view. You're searching for the truth tonight. How fast? Someday I would rather honestly confess that you have the problem, you are in a mess. There's no way to make this right before you try. Even though you are so lonely to say bye. My intentions, but you wouldn't, you be my guest. When you ask me to forget you, I'll be blessed. I'm so blessed. Yes. Yeah. Tell me what you're gonna do. Tell me what you're gonna do. It feels you, so you, so you, baby. Tell me what you're gonna do. Tell me what you're gonna do. Tell me what you're gonna do. 'Cause I gave my life to you. What? I really need it. So, tell me what you're gonna do. Tell me what you're gonna do. It feels you, so you, so you, baby. Tell me what you're gonna do. Tell me what you're gonna do.
Welcome back. You're listening to 87 Live on 87 Sports Fans Radio. I want to talk to you really quickly about CG imaging. A lot of you folks might hear us talk about this and wonder, what are these guys talking about? Well, CG imaging, what they do is they bring your ideas to life with 3D animation. Say that you're trying to pitch an idea to your boss and your ideas and your words and your drawings just aren't doing the trick. go to CG Imaging. Say you're trying to sell a product to a client and you want to show them what your product will look like in their space. CG Imaging can make that happen and make it look realistic in 3D. Maybe you're starting a business and you need a logo. Go to CG Imaging. They designed our logo and the header for our website. So go to their website, cg-imaging.com. CG Imaging, virtually creating reality. Now, we want to wrap up the NBA. We're talking about the NBA Finals to date. Now we'll get into our Game 7 preview and what the Spurs and Heat have to do and have to avoid doing to win. And then we'll really quickly go through our top 5 sports championship games before leading off the top of the hour with Jim Sarantias, the Fantasy Greek, to talk NFL with
Fantasy
us.
Greek.
So, Steve-O, before the season began, we both picked the Miami Heat to win. Are you still going with that?
Yes. I cannot see Miami losing this game. I just don't see it happening. I know the Spurs technically are the better team because they are more balanced, but I honestly don't think Dwayne Wade is going to let them lose this game. I think he's going to be the big story, same as he was in Game 4. You know, he had an awful game the last 2 games. He didn't really show up, and yesterday's game he definitely didn't show up. I think he's going to have a monster game tomorrow, and it's going to be, maybe it'll be a swan song. Maybe he might retire because his knee is shot, but I think tomorrow is going to be Miami Heat.
I'm inclined to agree with you. Nothing would help me. Nothing would make me feel better than to sit here in this seat next week and talk about what went wrong and what the Heat have to do because they lost. But they're on their home floor. It's Game 7. It's going to be entertaining as hell, that's for sure. But in the end, you look at the talent from top to bottom, and the Spurs rode Danny Green and Gary Neal, those kind of players, pretty much as far as they can go. And the X factor here really is Danny Green. If he's able to get off like he had every game except last night, then he might have a different dynamic here, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think the Heat have figured him out. I think they figured the Spurs out. It'll take one hell of an adjustment by Greg Popovich. Not that he's not capable of it, but I think the Heat just have too much talent, and when they want to do something, they do it. It's one of the things that frustrates me the most about that team. And with a Game 7, there's no tomorrow. No, it's all over. It's one game for the whole bag of marbles. So I think you're going to see a stifling Miami Heat defense, and it wouldn't surprise me if tomorrow's actually a blowout.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Out there. But if the Spurs do want to win, they need Danny Green. They need to find a way to get him open, and he needs to hit. Tony Parker cannot shoot like he did, and Manu Ginobili cannot be on the floor.
See, no, that's the thing. I think the key to them winning is Ginobili.
Well, if he plays like he did in Game 5, yes.
Yeah.
But games 1 through 4 and 6, he was oh my God, he stunk the joint up.
Yeah.
But
I will always say that they live and die in a series, not just game to game. He's kind of their it guy. Like Danny Green, this is an amazing series for him, but I think it's just an anomaly. I mean, you saw last night, he was 1 for 7 with 3 points. That is the Danny Green that got cut by 3 different teams, including San Antonio twice. You know, the other shooting is sometimes people get in zones, and they just are. I like to call it the Mark Rippon zone. You know, he had that 1 year with Washington where he couldn't do no wrong, and then after that went to just garbage. But Ginobili, he's that guy. He's that veteran that can get that shot and get that rebound and make that pass. That San Antonio needs their big 3.
I agree with you. I just don't think Ginobili's got it in him. I don't. I have no faith. It's sad to see him play like this on this stage because he's had such a good career. As a basketball fan, it's sad to see him play like this, but he is an absolute train wreck. And I believe in my heart that him on the floor is a disadvantage for the Spurs.
Mm-hmm. So no, I'm gonna agree.
On the Heat side, I think LeBron has to be aggressive like he can do. He doesn't always. He needs to keep going to the hoop, drawing fouls, get to the foul line, settling for outside shots, passing, needlessly when he should be looking for his own shot first. I think that'll get them into trouble. Mario Chalmers needs to play like he did last night. He doesn't necessarily have to score, but he can't miss. He's got to shoot for a decent percentage, and he cannot turn the ball over. I think that the Birdman needs to play decent minutes because it's obvious the effect that he has on the game. If you compare Game 5 to Game 6 or Games 4 and 5 to Game 6, the defensive presence that he brings, even if it is a little bit of a Bush League game that he brings to the NBA, it is what it is, and it works. So
no, I agree. I think him and Ray Allen both have to put in 25 minutes tomorrow night. Because they need Ray Allen. And one thing Ray Allen has proven in all of his years is he is lights out on whatever home court he plays. He's lights out, and he needs to be in that game.
So there you have it, folks. The tale of the tape. So now, with all the hyperbole going on about last night being one of the best playoff games that anyone can remember, I've heard multiple people say it's the best game they've ever been a part of, which I thought that I'd put myself to the test, and also you, Mr. Taylor. So I asked you to write down the top 5 games in a championship game or championship series that you can remember in your lifetime watching. The top 5 in any order. It doesn't have to be 1 to 5 or 5 to 1. What's your top 5?
All right, I have 5. One of them is a regular playoff game, but it had such an impact on me that I put it on the list.
This better be good because you just violated rule number 1.
I know the number one game, and this is the number one. Now, mind you, this is ones like we said, these are ones we've watched and had an impact on us. My number one game is that game. It's the 1991 playoffs, Game 5, Celtics versus Pacers. It was a huge victory for Boston because they're getting towards the end of Bird's career. For those of you that don't remember, this was at the old Boston Garden. And in the old stadiums in the NBA, the players used to have one way to come in, and that was dead center in the middle of the floor. It cut right through the stands, and it went like right in between the scoring table. In that game, Bird his back was shot. I mean, he was just a mess, and he ended up falling to the ground because Chuck Person gave him a little push, slammed his head on the ground, and was like almost knocked unconscious. Leaves the game, and the Celtics had a big lead at that point, and they started losing the lead, and it got down to where the game was actually close, and I believe they actually lost the lead, and all of a sudden, Larry Bird comes walking out from the back. The crowd went nuts. Took off his warm-up and knelt down without asking the coach if he can go back in the game. Went in the game, ended up scoring 32 points on 12 and 19 shooting, had 9 rebounds, 7 assists, and the Celtics won by 3. That was like the pinnacle sports moment of my life. It was unbelievable. Like, just to see him walk out was, a lot of people point to the Willis Reed in the Knicks championship series in the 70s. To me, this was my version of that because you have a player that everyone needs to have that emotional push from, and it was unbelievable. My number 2 was the 2003 American League Championship Series, Game 7. Aaron Boone, 11th inning home run against Tim Wakefield. Once again, Aaron effing Boone, unbelievable. One of the best moments, the highlights of any sports moment of me. My next one is Game 5 in the 1997 Finals, and everyone referred to that as the flu game with Jordan versus Utah. The Bulls versus Utah. But finding out recently that it wasn't the flu, he actually had food poisoning, and my brother Brian, who's listening, can attest to this. I would rather have the flu any day than food poisoning. And the fact that he was able to play the game the way he did with food poisoning was unbelievable. And I have my problems with Jordan, but that game still, watching what he did was unreal. The next one is the 1986 Game 6. I don't think anyone cannot have this on their list. The Mets-Red Sox, the big Buckner between the legs. I mean, that is one of the most indelible sports choke moments in history. And to where you could have a game where that one moment it went from the Mets ready to just walk with their heads down into the dugout, and within 2 seconds they were just elated because they were going to win the game. You know what I mean? That to me is huge. And my last one was Super Bowl 34, the Rams-Titans, when the Rams, the greatest show on turf, won the championship game, mainly because the end of that game where Kevin Dyson was tackled, stretching his arm out on the 1 yard line and would have tied the game. I'll never forget that game as long as I live. That was just an insane moment. I remember it took me hours to just kind of come down off of that. That to me was phenomenal. So those are my top 5.
Very nice list. Very nice list.
Thank you.
Even though you didn't pay attention to the rules, but
I paid attention, but I had to put that bird game in. Okay.
Anyway, so my top 5 in no specific order. 1986 World Series Game 6, like you said, the Buckner game. People forget that the Red Sox had the Mets on the ropes. They were done. That series was over. And the whole impact, even though it was an error, a fluky error, whatever you want to say, it still makes it one of the best games that I can remember. Also on this list, I have Super Bowl 25, which was the Norwood game.
Oh, the Norwood.
That was a phenomenal game, and the fact that it came down to a last-second field goal that was eventually missed, much to my friends, my Bills fans' friends' chagrin. Then I also have Super Bowl 34 on there as well. 1 yard short. A phenomenal ending. Tragic, triumphant, all in one shot. I have the 1991 World Series Game 7. Jack Morris pitching 10 innings.
Oh, that was insane.
That was phenomenal. Phenomenal. And then I also have the 1998 NBA Finals Game 6 was Jordan's last game. And hitting that shot over Brian Russell, when it happened, we all thought that was the last moment we were going to see Jordan. I try to forget about the Washington Wizards years, but to hit the championship clinching shot that way, being a Laker fan, I was not a big Jordan fan growing up in those days. But to have that moment happen and to be in front of my TV watching that happen, I got chills up my spine. I got chills up my spine when I thought about it today when I was making this list. It was just a phenomenal. So last night was phenomenal. It's not even on my list. Of the top 5, but it would probably be in my top 10 if I had to push myself.
Yeah.
So.
And I got to tell you, in making this list, I came across a stat that blew my mind. And I am I used to be, I should say, a big NBA historian. Like, I loved learning about past players and teams and franchises and games. The 1962 NBA Finals, the classic rivalries of the day with the Celtics and the Lakers. In 2 games, Game 5, the Lakers won on Elgin Baylor scoring 61 points and having 22 rebounds. And then Game 7 of that series, Bill Russell put up 30 points and 40 rebounds to win in overtime for the Celtics to win that title. That's ridiculous. I had to read that a couple times to make sure I was getting the stats right.
Those numbers are just inhumane.
Then it made me feel bad for Elgin Baylor because it brought out that he lost 8 times in the finals to the Celtics. And then the year he retires, the Lakers win the championship.
All right. Now, on the line, we have Jim the Fantasy Greek holding, but we also have another caller. Could you please identify yourself?
Come up with something clever to say, but it's just Brian.
Oh, there you are.
It's the Stein winner.
Yes, the winner of the Beer Stein of Knowledge for winning the NCAA tournament group, Mr. Brian Taylor. What's your thoughts?
Without time to prepare a top 5, I can only come up with one, and you guys both missed it. And it is the greatest playoff game in sports history.
Don't say hockey.
No, it would, of course, be Game 5 of the 1995 ALDS between the Yankees and the Mariners.
Oh, is that the one where Griffey came sliding home with the game-winning run?
Yep, where both Jack McDowell and Randy Johnson came out of the bullpens in extra innings.
Oh, no,
that's right.
See, I didn't think about that because, Brian, the original rules were it was supposed to be a championship series.
Oh, well, Steve broke those early on. So
yeah, he did, but I didn't know that until he read his list off. So
he stuttered.
No, I agree with Brian.
Oh, it was a phenomenal game, but if we're abiding by the rules, it can't be on the list.
Well, and I'm done with you. You're dead to me.
Nice.
Hey, I'm just excited that you finally called in.
You called in once before.
Yeah, no, I know, but again, I thought he was out in La La Land.
All right. Well, I'll think of something better and call back.
All right, thanks. Well, listen to the next segment because it's the favorite segment of the week. It's the NFL segment with the Fantasy Greek. So call back if you want to join that conversation.
There's nothing better than a fantasy. You can handle 2 phone calls at once?
Yeah, we'll see.
Man, technology.
You got to love it.
All right.
All right. We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, like I said, Jim Sarantias, the Fantasy Greek, will join us to talk NFL news and notes. You're listening to 87 Live on 87 Sports Fans Radio.
To be wish I realized it before, but I'm so dumb. I remember you saying that life is just a game. Now it's my chance. I'm on the edge. I'm wondering if I should die with broken wings. I have seen you flying over the town. I wish I could follow you anywhere, nailed to the ground. I remember you saying that there's another way. Now it's my chance. I'm on the edge. I'm wondering if I should die with broken wings.
Ready? 1. You will do this 4 times with the left, 4 with the right, then 8 times with both, then repeat.
Welcome back to 87 Live. Keith Grieve and Steve Taylor here. Now joined and ready for the best part of our week. It's NFL News and Notes with Jim Sarantias, the Fantasy Greek. Follow him on Twitter, at the Fantasy Greek. The website is thefantasygreek.com. And let's make it all official here. I didn't do this last week. Jim, welcome to the program.
Keith and Chris, thanks for having me.
Steve, you mean?
I'm sorry, Steve. Keith and Steve,
Hey,
thanks for having me.
I'll answer to any name, so that's fine.
Which is really confusing because, like, my brother's name is Chris, so Steve was probably, like, wigged out for a second there. Didn't know what was going on, but...
You're all good like that. Listen,
Yes.
it's great to be on the show. I know we're missing out on a great hockey game between the Bruins and the Blackhawks, but what an incredible day of news in the NFL for a time that there really shouldn't be anything major going on.
Right, and I hate talking about stuff that we don't know all the facts, but because the player is so high profile and the effect on his team may be so far reaching, I feel like we have to lead off with Aaron Hernandez. There's confusing stories coming out now about a man accusing him of shooting his eye out, in addition to whether or not he's a suspect in a separate incident that first was reported as a murder and a shooting, and now no one's saying nothing about the body that was found and with the deceased. And right now it's just a whole lot of smoke, and we don't know enough details. But it does seem that even if it's unwittingly, Hernandez is somewhat involved. Mm. So how does this not become a distraction as we head into July?
You know, Keith, I think you're absolutely right. It is a distraction. Today, you would not want to be Aaron Hernandez, and probably yesterday. This all really started yesterday. I sort of went back on my Twitter log, and I noted that it was yesterday that Sports Illustrated was breaking the story that he was being questioned, that is, Aaron Hernandez was being questioned in relation to this investigation that surrounded the death of a man who I don't have his name. I don't remember it off the top of my head.
It's Odin Lloyd.
Odin Lloyd. I believe he's a semi-pro football player, and he was found approximately 1 mile from Aaron Hernandez's home, which, that doesn't really mean anything. So the issue started, things started coming out about this that weren't making much sense, that, there's a car that was being associated was the word, and is still the word being used, associated with Aaron Hernandez, and that it was in reference to this that Aaron Hernandez was related to this. But then the story comes out that Odin's girlfriend is the sister of Aaron Hernandez's girlfriend, so there is some sort of a personal relationship between the two, at least in terms of people, some sort of a connection. And then we find out that late last night, which in a very typical law enforcement fashion, police descend on his home, search the house. There's no reference in the reports to a search warrant, so I suppose it's possible that consent was given, but the guess here would be that a warrant was obtained just because nobody has to give them permission to enter unless they have some sort of a circumstance that lets them walk in the door. So, you got to think there was a warrant involved, and they searched the house. The reports are for 2 or more hours, with investigators exiting the house with a box of something. What it is, we don't know. The belief here is that Odin, that there was some sort of wrongdoing related to Odin, whether he was shot, whether he was killed in some other way, something had happened. So it sort of relates to that. And the story itself, obviously, it's bizarre. While there's one story saying Aaron Hernandez is not a suspect, in terms of the investigation, there's a separate report or reports saying that he hasn't been excluded. Now, no one has indicated who is a suspect in this case, or at least I haven't seen anything, haven't read into anything. So, it totally sounds like we have the police kind of collecting evidence, and sooner or later, the hammer's going to drop, and it's going to drop on all the suspects all at the same time. So that's a pretty bad day or 2 days for Aaron Hernandez. I mean, the potential charges, obviously, and again, none of this is substantiated, but if this fellow was murdered, that's a charge. Conspiracy is another charge, and then obstruction is another charge.
Well, not to keep everybody updated, posted by Mike Florio on Pro Football Talk at 11:05 Eastern Time tonight. The victim has officially been identified as 27-year-old Odin Lloyd, and his death has been ruled a homicide. According to Fox 25 in Boston, police have determined that 4 men, including Hernandez and Odin Lloyd, were in a vehicle together after leaving a bar, and that only 3 of the men returned to Hernandez's home.
Wow.
So they used in this article, they use the term unfolding. I think that's an understatement.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is now you've got this other story that broke during the course of the day, which is that Aaron Hernandez was being sued by an individual for a gun supposedly owned by Hernandez being discharged, and this man losing his eye as well as having other personal injuries. Apparently the lawsuit was filed on the 13th in federal court in southern Florida. It was withdrawn, and it's apparently going to be refiled. And so now there's another separate matter that's suddenly come to light, which is sort of, maybe they're related, maybe they're not. It's almost, you would be hard-pressed to think that these are related, because if this other individual is involved in a crime, why would he sue anybody for anything?
Right.
But, I suppose there are people out there that are just not that bright, so I guess we'll find out more if these two things are related, but it's hard to say right now that they are. I know there's a police report. Ian Rappaport was reporting that the police report involved in the shooting incident down in which was filed in Florida. The police asked the man if he knew who had done what he alleged was done, and he said he didn't know. Now, it's possible he just didn't know because he didn't see it. It all happens so fast, but that there's somebody that does know. So, what a strange day in football.
Let me play. And again, maybe I shouldn't get into this, but so on Mike Garofalo on USA Today is reporting that this man, Alexander Bradley, actually is his name, who is suing him for shooting him in the eye or whatever, mentioned to police that he was shot by both black and Hispanic males. So, has anybody seen any description of this the deceased from the other night? Was he African American by any chance?
I've not seen anything.
Yeah.
So, if he does, what if the two of them were in? It's a whole giant cluster this could turn into. So,
yeah.
I guess maybe we shouldn't travel down that road. And since this is a sports show, keep it sports related.
Yeah. I got to tell you though, speaking of sports related, I think one of the unfortunate consequences for the team. Now I know that someone dying is the most unfortunate consequence, but for the Patriots is there was a start today. Over this last week, the whole Tebow thing has kind of gone quiet, which is what the Patriots were hoping it would. But then after this information came out, and with Gronkowski having his surgery, all of a sudden I started hearing grumbles today, does this mean there's going to be a fast tracking of Tebow to learn how to play tight end? And I don't believe that's going to happen, but I think for the team, on top of all of this negative press, to have the Tebow thing resurface, I think is horrible. You know what I mean? It's unfortunate for them that all of this is happening, and now that might kind of resurface.
I just
that's the first I've heard of that, and that's just utterly ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, who really cares at this point? There's just such a big story going on that really has nothing to do with football, but obviously has football ramifications, and we can talk about that. What could happen? But at this time, until we see the police sort of put down their cards, a lot is speculation right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what does this do to the New England Patriots if, assuming Hernandez is unavailable, to say the least, and Gronkowski's got questions about with his back surgery and all, he's supposed to be ready for the start of training camp, but the Patriots offense that relied pretty much on these two athletic tight ends, and I know we went into it last week about Danny Amendola trying to replace Wes Welker. Is this offense all of a sudden in shambles?
I wouldn't say that it's in shambles. This offense all revolves around Tom Brady. Certainly the tight ends were a big part of this, which is, because outside of Wes Welker, you didn't really see any of the other wide receivers thrive in the offense. But, Tom Brady, I think he's a guy who's going to find a way to succeed, and he's got a good enough offensive line around him to give him some time. I mean, if you look at the Patriots depth chart, we've got Jake Ballard, who's next in line. He's obviously a proven tight end. There's going to be an opportunity for him to step up. We've got Michael Wanui, who is then next in line, but he's probably built more like a blocking tight end. So I don't see him having a big role. And then the next available tight end is going to be Daniel Fells, formerly, I believe it was of the Rams, who he had his moments where he was decent in the passing game, and unfortunately he's just going to step up. And then we do have two rookies that the Patriots did sign. Both of them are undersized for tight ends. Zach Sudafeld out of Nevada, 225, 6'6", and then Brandon Ford out of Clemson, who's 6'3" and 240 pounds. So they both shape up to be sort of wide receiving tight ends, but obviously you don't expect much from rookies.
Right.
And I mean, I'm sorry.
No, so they've got options. It's just, they're not ideal.
Yeah. And for anyone that can make adjustments, there's really no one better than Belichick. I mean, look what he did when Brady went out and they had to put Matt Castle in. They were still they had a successful season. So if you can take out a major component like Brady and still be successful, then I think he's going to be able to figure out what to do with the receiving core.
Belichick.
I might even give Josh McDaniels all the credit.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's
anyway, guys, I mean, I think this is all speculation right now until we're only seeing little bits and pieces. Exactly what Aaron Hernandez's role in all this, or what is going to be alleged to be, remains to be seen. It's just what a bizarre story. I know somewhere somebody reminded me that here was a guy whose draft stock actually fell because of his off-the-field issues. And maybe he's just, the company he keeps is just not the right company. So that's sort of a shame. And it's a shame that these guys who sort of are thrusted into the limelight, making a lot of money, kind of choose to still hang out with people that, are getting them into trouble. So it's not to say that happened in this case, but it's just one of those things. That's what people believe, and that's what they think. So,
yeah. If you're going to have questions at those positions, it always helps to have a guy like Tom Brady under center. So.
Yes, it does.
It makes it a little easier. That's all I'm
absolutely.
All right, so moving on. You know what? I just hope justice is done to the deceased. That's all I hope for. Anyway. Desmond Bishop, released by the Green Bay Packers in the wake of his season-ending injury during the first preseason game of last season, reportedly visiting with the Minnesota Vikings. Now, I don't know, there's something about me. Maybe it says more about me, the fact that I personally love the fact that he's trying to stick it to the Packers by going to a division rival. But what does he do to Minnesota's defense should he sign there? Nothing's been announced, obviously.
Nothing has been announced, and the Vikings, they were a team that I think when we were talking Brian Urlacher and we were talking about different things, the Vikings were a team that linebacker was in need of theirs during the course of the off season, and when it came to Brian Urlacher, there was talk about the Vikings being interested, but then the Vikings saying, hey, we want to look at our guys first and give them the opportunity. And I think that with them immediately asking Desmond Bishop to come in, they wanted to kick the tires and say, hey, could this guy be the answer? Because now Brian Urlacher's off the market, or be somebody that could help us. And he was allowed to leave Minnesota without a contract. Doesn't even look like an offer was made. All that was described in reports related to the workout was that it was a good workout and that the Vikings were doing their due diligence. From the sounds of that kind of a report suggests that, maybe he had a good workout, but nobody was really impressed.
Right.
That there's no signing impending. So his next workout is supposed to be with the Chiefs, and then there's some talk that he might work out with the Jags. And those are two teams that do have a need. So if he impresses them or impresses them enough that they sit there and say, hey, let's sign this guy, get him on our team, and once he's fully healthy, we can roll with him if we need him. There's something else that, I need to remind everybody is that, this was a guy that actually missed 2012 with a hamstring injury. He has not been to any OTAs, hasn't attended any minicamp. He says he's healthy, but there's nothing to necessarily say that that's true. We're just assuming that it is. And I just think that there is some excitement with a player from a good team who has shown some promise in the past. He's available, and there's some teams with need. So, I wouldn't overblow this, but at the same time, it is a story, and there's a couple teams that probably can use him.
Right. He's going to be 29 during training camp. So, losing all of last year recovering from the hamstring injury. In 2011, he did total 95 tackles in 13 games with 5 sacks. One would want to believe that there's somebody he can help if he's healthy.
Well, it's just going to come down to how much he recovered from a hamstring tear. I mean, that's not an easy thing to get back to 100% off of.
Well, he says he's healthy, so why would he lie?
Yeah, why would he lie?
But if he blew the socks off the Vikings, they would have done everything they could to sign him before he walked out the door.
Right. You got to imagine it would take a guy a while to get in football shape too. So if they don't have that kind of patience, the Vikings, they're all about winning now. That was sarcasm.
Indeed. They are. You say that with a little bit of disdain.
Oh, gee, I don't know. It's an old Norris division rivalry. I can't be professional when it comes to the Packers, the Lions, or the Vikings. I'm sorry. It's a weakness.
Yeah, you never forgave the Vikings for moving into a dome. Just be honest.
No, I never forgave them for Lake Minnetonka.
Oh God.
But that's a whole other story for another day.
You know what? Has anybody been to Lake Minnetonka? Because I, for one, would like to go.
Apparently, it's a rocking good time, from what I've heard. Just make sure you clean up the mess afterwards. Anyway,
I'm in.
Okay.
And by the way, I went ahead and just pulled up the depth charts real quick here. The Chiefs, they look like a pretty ideal team for Desmond Bishop because they run a 3-4 defense just like the Packers. So that, I think if there's anybody that could go ahead and sign them, it's them. They've been making the moves, so we'll see.
Got a new coaching staff there in Kansas City. Maybe it's the right fit. So
absolutely.
The last topic on my radar: the Bengals on Hard Knocks. I have all the respect in the world for Marvin Lewis. I really do. And everybody in those circles respects him as a really great coach, and the underwhelming results in Cincinnati no one attributes to whether Marvin Lewis can coach or not. But at the same time, is there any franchise more exciting than the Bengals that we could have put on this? I mean, now, in the wake of the whole Aaron Hernandez mess, I would love to see the Patriots on Hard Knocks. Not that Belichick would ever allow that. But I really would like to see a team. Maybe I don't want to see a championship team on Hard Knocks. I want to see a team that's been cellar dwelling, that's got guys fighting and clawing for jobs. I would have liked to see the Kansas City Chiefs personally. Or the Philadelphia Eagles. Guys, teams in transition. And that would have been more dramatic to me. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I would like to see Hard Knocks off the air. I'm sorry. I don't believe in NFL reality shows. I think it's garbage. It's just it's in the Kardashian era where we think we need to have a reality to create drama or whatnot with NFL teams. I think it's garbage. I think training camps should be closed door, if they do have the practices where fans could come watch, but anything that happens behind closed doors, I think should stay there. I never liked it from the start.
Oh, well,
I here's what I think. I think that when you put a camera in front of a ham, they behave like a ham.
Exactly.
So some of the Hard Knocks that we've seen that sort of have come over a little bit over the top. Parts of last year with the Dolphins, parts, I want to say the year before with the Jets. I mean, none of that is surprising. Marvin Lewis, I mean, he's just a solid coach. I think he's a guy that, he doesn't let that kind of stuff get to him. Why they chose to do this, who knows? The Bengals are a great team. They can coach up their players. They don't have anybody that I can think of off the top of my head that I would put as sort of that ham. Except maybe James Harrison, but I think however he behaves is probably how he behaves without a camera.
Right.
The teams that I thought would have been interesting, well, first of all, I put the Jaguars on my list. There's so many different reasons, but I think they can be described, at least for right now, as sort of a train wreck because of all the issues that they have on their team.
Sorry to interrupt. I just want to let you know the Blackhawks just won.
Nice. Nice.
Wait, is that your wife in the background?
Yeah, that was my wife in the background.
That's outstanding.
As well as my neighbor downstairs.
That is outstanding.
So,
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just thought I had to let you know.
God bless them. 2-2. It's coming back to Chicago. It's the way it should be. Professional championship. Two really good teams. I mean, you got to tip your hat to Boston. I can't say anything more about them. I think the Hawks are, in one respect, a better team because I think they're great skaters. But Boston, they're just powerful, and it's could go 7.
Yeah, it's a good time to be a sports fan. You got two really competitive playoff series in both sports. You got the football starting up. And baseball, heading into the All-Star break, which I still say baseball has the best All-Star game of all the leagues, but that's just me.
Yeah, it's gotten better, much, much better. So anyway, getting back to what we were talking about, I put the Jaguars on my list and said, here's a team, they've got all these issues, it would be so interesting to see. But then I thought, no, for that reason, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see a struggling team. I'd rather they were on their own to try and work things out, work towards their future. And I could say the same thing about the Jets. The Jets have gotten enough press as it is. As much as entertaining as you might think Rex Ryan could be, let's look at somebody else. I had the Eagles on the list. I think, Steve, you mentioned the Eagles, and I thought that would be interesting. Just because it's Chip Kelly, I'd like to see these practices with the music that they've been reporting, and I think there's going to be, there's definitely an issue at the quarterback. You got Michael Vick, a guy who, since he's come back to the league, he hasn't had a complete season because of injury, who's followed by Nick Foles and then Matt Barkley. So there's some drama there. I think Deshaun Jackson would be an interesting guy to see in practice. He's been a guy whose name hasn't really been in the front of the news because of his injury issue last year. Otherwise, last year there was talk that the Eagles wanted to trade him on the eve of the draft. So, that would be sort of interesting, as well as Jeff Lurie. He's an interesting character, and so there's something there. But I thought there were two teams that I like better, and they are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Tennessee Titans. And who would you like to talk about first?
The Tampa Bay Bucks.
All right. I like the Tampa Bay Bucks because they really have some intriguing issues, and there's some good storylines that are going to take us up to week 1. On top of it, I think they finished the season last year 7-9. You could attribute them not making the playoffs to either Josh Freeman stalling in the last few weeks of the season, to their defense giving up a bunch of points in the stretch run of the season, and them just not being able to handle it. So you've got Freeman against Mike Lennon, a draftee that a lot of people are saying that there's sort of this quarterback controversy. I quite frankly don't think that there is one. It'd be a great time to see Darrelle Revis out there on the field, out there rehab. We got to see part of that last year, at least on the NFL Network. They were showing, when he was about to go into surgery and all these things. And so I think there's a good continuing story there. Vincent Jackson and Mike Williams, these are two intriguing players. The Buccaneers' schedule is looking pretty brutal in terms of the passing game. So, you wonder how these guys are doing. You wonder, are they going to, have chemistry with Josh Freeman? I like Mike Williams. He's actually been he's been a surprise ever since he sort of fell out of favor. He had that great rookie year. Then he struggled. He actually had a pretty decent year very quietly. The other person really why I would like to watch him is I'd like to see Mike Shiano up close and personal. He's a guy that, I don't quite get. Anybody who has, his defensive line sort of spear at the offensive line's leg on the last play of the game, I want to see more about what makes this guy tick. So that's what interested me about the Bucks.
What would be a better concept for that show is not so much to follow one team, but to maybe pick like 3 teams. And so you could see like differing styles of how different teams do different things differently, Like I like to see.
You just said different multiple times. I was impressed.
Oh, it's very different. It was different. It was different every time.
It was different every time, right?
But because I'd like to see Shiano and how he is, behind closed doors, and I'd like to see Chip Kelly and how he treats professional players now that he's been dealing with kids, leading up to this. I'm interested in all that behind the scenes stuff. I don't really care about the drama. I want to see how teams are run, and I would love to see the Bears because I just want to know what the hell goes on with my team. But other than, I just don't think the Bengals are really that interesting draw, and I don't know. It's not a big deal. I just wanted to talk about it.
Keith, I think you've hit it on the head. I don't think people find the Bengals interesting. As a football guy, I do because I think they've had some great drafts. They have some great coaches. They're able to get a lot out of these young players. But that's different than sort of wanting, the inside scoop and the inside story.
Right.
Now, the Titans, I like them for some similar reasons. I'm kind of interested in seeing Mike Munchak's style of coaching, but I'm more interested in sort of the battles and the storylines, how they play out with them. Because, they've got Jake Locker. They've done everything they could possibly. Well, there could have been more they could have done, but they've done their best to rebuild the offensive line. rebuild their defense. He's got an array of weapons in their running backs and their wide receivers. So it's pretty much on his shoulders to make this happen, or else, the Titans are going to move on. You've got Chris Johnson, a guy that everybody fell in love with a few seasons ago, and now everybody is sort of disheartened. He got the big contract. He hasn't lived up to expectations. Last year, while he had a decent season, he was inconsistent. And then, they brought in Sean Green. I don't think Sean Green's going to take Chris Johnson's job, but it's possible that they're going to work him in and sort of try and make it more of Chris Johnson and Lendale White, but we won't know that just yet.
It will be hilarious if Sean Green goes to the Titans and all of a sudden is a superstar. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Here's the thing. The Titans actually, they shape up to have a good offensive line on paper, and that leads me to another reason why I'd love to see him on Hard Knocks is, as of today, 3 of their starting offensive linemen, left tackle Michael Roos, guard Andy Levitre, and right tackle David Stewart, were all MIA for drills and minicamp. And they, in fact, signed veteran offensive tackle Barry Richardson, who played for the Rams and the Chiefs. Likely he signed as a depth signing. I mean, I don't see the guy starting outright. But, if they sign him because they're concerned of the health of their line, and that's sort of, there's kind of a red flag. There's something to be said to that. Then, how about the wide receivers there? They got a bunch. Mm-hmm. And yet you've got Kenny Britt, who, he still continues to be sort of, last year he had a good season, but he sort of had the injury albatross on his shoulders, and sort of has had not the right quarterback fit. So he's never really lived up to the expectations that, we have in reality and we have in fantasy. Then Nate Washington, he's a guy that, continues to fight. Last year before the season started, I mentioned to somebody, why is it that at the end of the football season, it always seems like Nate Washington becomes fantasy football relevant? That didn't quite happen last year, but it certainly happened before that, and now reports are he's having one of the best off seasons of his career. And lastly is Kendall Wright, or actually not lastly, second to last is Kendall Wright, a promising young rookie. Love to see how he's interacting with the vets. Love to see how he's stepping it up, because I think he's the guy that, to look out for, and certainly in fantasy football, after Kenny Britt, he's the guy to have. And lastly, how about Delaney Walker? Here's a guy they bring in. He's supposed to be better than Jared Cook. Like to see that. Right. So I think there's a lot of reasons why that's a team that is sort of intriguing. They were a good team a few years ago, and now they've just kind of fallen apart, and they're kind of coming back together. So is this it?
Yeah, valid points all around, really, because
absolutely.
The Titans were always, even in the Jeff Fisher era, were always a team that I always kept my eye on, and I never had anything bad to say about them. And yes, I did fall in love with Chris Johnson, as Steve felt the need to point out. But when I made those comments, I was absolutely correct. And hindsight is always 20/20.
Because if you remember, well, hindsight's hindsight. But I have an eye for the truth, and I said Adrian Peterson would be an end-out better running back. You disagreed. You thought Chris Johnson would, and I was right.
If you had an eyesight for the truth, you would not be 0 for your fantasy career. Okay, that's it. I'm done. That's it. I'm done.
Speaking of, I'm starting to work on some of my ranks, and for now, I do like Chris Johnson. I forget where I have him exactly. I know it's right around 12. I can't remember if it's in the top 12 or just outside of it. But it's that one thing that you look at and you go, is this guy going to be consistent? He had a bunch of games.
Well, I know one question. One question I don't need to ask you anymore is, should I keep Aaron Hernandez? So there it is.
This is going to be interesting. You got Gronkowski, who will likely be ready to start practicing right before the season opens, maybe a couple weeks before. So then the question becomes, can he, within 2 weeks, sort of be in game shape? And the answer is probably no. He probably won't really be in game shape until the end of September, beginning of October. So do they play him? Do they just rest him and practice him until they're ready? That's probably the way to go, because you want this guy for the long haul. But in fantasy football, would you draft him first? Because he certainly is, when healthy, the best tight end. Or would you drop him a little bit and say, look, there's a few guys you might want to take first, but then go get him and get a second guy that should be at least carry you for a month? So, it's interesting because you kind of got to evaluate your own risk. And some people will say, oh, this is it, I would do that. And some people would say, no, I wouldn't. So, we'll see what happens.
I made a trade offer today. Excuse me. I made a trade offer today. I offered Aaron Hernandez for this person's first round pick in our dynasty draft. So I will clue you in next week whether or not it was accepted or not.
I think they might be waiting to see what happens before.
Yeah, I think. Well, I got a 2 day.
Who would your backup tight end be?
Well, we have in our league. You don't really need a tight end because it's all flex positions. You need you can do the run and shoot if you want. You can run with 2 tight ends if you want. We have that kind of flexible lineup. So with Larry Fitzgerald on my bench, I don't really need Aaron Hernandez.
Oh, I think that's absolutely true.
And
absolutely true.
Quite frankly, with the amount of keepers that we have, I was going to David Wilson is on my bench, and I didn't have a keeper spot for him. And I don't want to let him go. I kind of want to hold on to him as much as possible.
Well, now let me ask you this: what if he countered back and so I'll give you the 3rd round pick or the 4th round?
No, I'll just release him.
Oh wow!
If I can't,
certainly you have to wait and see what happens. I mean, you can't just let him go.
In our league, after the 2nd round, you're not getting any starters because of the dynasty value. So if I'm not going to get a 1st or 2nd round pick for Aaron Hernandez, then I'll just not keep him and take my chances.
Well, no, you could. You should. I mean, obviously, I don't know who's in your pool exactly, not having played in it. But, I mean, Delaney Walker could be there in a later round. It's possible. Boy, I wish I had my ranks here. Mm-hmm. But there should be a few decent tight ends that are sort of sleepers. Mm-hmm. That, you might be able to get in a later round that might actually do something. The tight end position is an interesting one this year. It's one that I think there's going to be just a handful of good ones that will play like wide receivers, and then there's going to be a whole bunch that are going to be hit or miss of the 800 yards, 6 to 8 touchdowns in a season, which, doesn't usually carry people to fantasy football championships. But, this year it may very well do that.
I think I'm going to change my name this year to Martellus Bennett's Captain Crunch.
Well, I'm kind of hoping because of the current injury situation with Crabtree in San Francisco that my 4-year now owning of Vernon Davis might actually pay off this year because I think he might go into that role, like you were saying, Jim, into becoming more of a wide receiver than a tight end and could hopefully have a consistent good year this year.
And, he's a guy that, at least as of today, it was reported that he's been working out with the wide receivers. Mm-hmm. So, there's every good possibility that could happen. I mean, here's a team that outside of Anquan Bolden, there's a bunch of question marks as to who their best receiving targets are going to be, which also could suggest that Vance McDonald may step up into this offense. Some other tight ends to consider sort of later, and let me see if I could just find a few. Owen Daniels could end up falling into that second half of tight ends, and I don't think he's going to necessarily be bad. Martellus Bennett from the Bears could be down there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Jared Cook, he's sort of a borderline. We haven't seen who's going to come out on top for the Bengals, whether it's Gresham or Eifert. It'll probably be Eifert, so he might be there in that second half. Heath Miller, nobody really knows whether or not he'll be available week 1. I don't think he will be. I mean, that injury was devastating, and it was towards the end of the season. I've heard he's starting to run, but I would be stunned if he was available. Boy, who else? And Delaney Walker from the Titans. There's just a bunch of names that you're kind of going, wow, he's going to be a top 10 tight end. Wow, he's going to be a top 12 tight end. So, we'll see a bunch of that this season.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm very interested to see what Tony Gonzalez is going to do now that he's officially coming back. I'm wondering how much of a role he's going to have in that offense with both Roddy White and, I'm drawing a blank right now.
Steven Jackson?
No.
The impact Steven Jackson's going to have on that team?
Well, Steven Jackson's obviously going to be, he's going to catch a lot of balls. But I know I have Steven Jackson thanks to you. I think he's going to have a huge impact. Thank you very much.
Okay, when he tears his
Julio
hand,
Jones.
Julio Jones, thank you. I don't know why I was drawing a blank with Julio Jones. But with
okay.
Roddy White, Julio Jones, and you have Steven Jackson, who is a very good pass-catching running back, with Tony Gonzalez coming back, is he going to be just mainly a third down end zone type receiver? Or is he going to get, 90-plus catches this season?
Well, put it this way, with all the question marks that are, and especially if things go south for Aaron Hernandez, without question, Tony Gonzalez will end up being a top 5 draft pick in fantasy football leagues. Right now, he's sort of there too, because he's been consistent. He actually had a decent year last season. There's no indication that this offense is going to change dramatically. The big change is going to be Steven Jackson. And if you actually look at Michael Turner's yards, I think he put up, not this past year, but the year before, roughly 1,300 rushing yards. So if now Steven Jackson puts up his typical 1,100, 1,200 rushing, tacks onto that his typical 200 in receiving, and then adds another 200 receiving, he certainly potentially could be scoring 10 touchdowns just like Michael Turner did. Yeah. Steven Jackson is at number 12 or at number 13 for right now, but he could easily be a guy that finishes top 10 running back and may even push for top 5 if everything goes his way.
Yeah.
I mean, you just look at the numbers and you're like, wow, this certainly is reasonable.
I like my trade.
Of course.
Oh, I forgot you guys did the trade.
Yeah, I took Matt Forte for him, pretty much went up. So.
And I got Forte right there as well. I mean, he's right there. There's these guys. Forte, you look at him, and you know his numbers, and his numbers are always right around, putting him right where he is. But then you hear the reports that his role is going to change or grow in this offense, and you just is that true? Is it going to happen? I mean, you'd like to think so. I think the Bears, for whatever reason, they have a feeling that they don't have the best wide receivers. That's why they've brought in some guys. Who did they just signed Devin Aromashidu?
Did they bring him back? I missed that.
I believe that they did.
Oh, dear God.
And who I always liked. I mean, he had the one season where if you projected his numbers out, I mean, he would have been a top wide receiver in the NFL, but either his attitude wasn't right or the coaching staff didn't like him for one reason or other, and it just never happened.
He was there. He felt he was on the outs during the Martz administration, if I'm not mistaken.
That's probably true.
Fell out of favor.
That's probably true. I mean, there's something to be said. If you don't get along with your coaches, it's sort of like a boss. They're not going to give you a break, even if you're talent-wise deserving of it.
Right.
Yeah.
They'll give it to somebody who's just been working hard. So, but I get that sense from the Bears. They're not necessarily particularly happy with some of their wide receivers or the depth of their wide receivers. So to see Forte's role, grow in the passing game makes all the sense in the world. What's left for Michael Bush? Who knows?
Right.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well, maybe they could use him more as the pounder, just because Forte's become very injury prone. So maybe rushing Forte 15 times a game and then putting him out to catch some balls instead of giving him the 20, 25 rushes a game could hopefully help him make it through a full season without getting injured.
And that's true. From your lips to God ears and back down to Mark Trestman's ears, I mean, Michael Bush, when he was with the Oakland Raiders, both he and Darren McFadden projected as top running backs, more so McFadden than Bush. But, you could count on Bush as being at times a low RB2 and certainly an RB3 or flex play week to week. Now you don't even know how to treat the guy. I mean, he is, I suppose, on people's draft radars, but, is he going to be like last year where he just gets a handful of carries and a few scores? Is he going to be healthy? And something you pointed out, you mentioned Matt Forte and his injuries, and it's very funny. Different players that even when I step up to sit down and do player profiles and the analysis on what they're potentially going to do the following season, I thought the same thing, Matt Forte injury risk, but then I look at the games he missed, and there's no injury risk. I mean, he missed a few games. And people, I think, blow it out of proportion because they just remember in the back of their heads, missed a game. I think he missed one game last season, officially, for an injury, where it was the season before that he actually missed multiple games. Yeah. So, when you actually then sit down and look at stuff, and that's why you have to be careful not to get caught up in all the, what do I want to call, all the talk that people will throw out there. People will say something like what you said, just they'll throw it out there and you'll be like, oh, but then when you actually look, you'll be like, hey, he's really not that bad. A bigger injury concern, just for example, would be DeMarco Murray.
Right. In Forte's career, he's played 16, 16, 16, 12, and 15 games.
There we go. Yeah, I rest my case. I mean, why would you walk around thinking that he's an injury concern? I'd say it's the complete opposite. He just hit a spat of injuries in a position that is injury-prone.
And for his career, averaging 4.2 yards per carry, 8.7 yards per reception.
God bless him.
Yeah, exactly. I'm really anxious for this preseason because I'm dying to see what this offense is going to look like between Trestman and Cromer.
Absolutely. And that's why I tell people try not to do their drafts until we've seen a little bit of the preseason. Because even when you don't get to see the players until that fourth game, like the main players really get in there, the fact of the matter is you're starting to sort of get good reports, get a good glimpse. I mean, things are going to start happening that, intuitively you're like, hey, this player's better than I thought. Or, their role in the offense is going to be bigger than I thought. So let me draft them ahead of so-and-so.
If your fantasy league drafts in July, your commissioner has no soul.
Absolutely.
I'm just saying.
None. Somebody the other day told me they drafted a team, and they actually didn't draft a bad team. I think both the quarterbacks were, this is Drew Brees and who was their backup? Oh, I don't remember. I want to say it was Michael Vick, but I don't think that's... Oh, Joe Flacco. And I thought that was a pretty good pairing. Joe Flacco, I mean, you look at him, and boy, do you want to jump up and down, in a way. You want to jump up and down and say, quarterback one. But, man, during the regular season last year, he didn't play like a quarterback one.
Mm-hmm.
He would have killed you. But in the playoffs, wow, he was phenomenal. I mean, if he could take what he did in the playoffs and put that in the regular season, this is a guy that could throw 4,500 to 5,000 yards passing and 30 to 40 touchdowns. I mean, that's just sick.
Right.
But, would you sit there and make him a top 12 quarterback? Probably not.
Yeah.
Not in fantasy anyway.
Totally agree. Well, look at the time.
I know, it's flown by.
A 55-minute segment. We got our money's worth out of you this week, Jim.
I aim to please.
Well, we are going to bid everybody adieu for the week. Thank you all for joining us.
And you know what, guys, real quick? Rest in peace, James Gandolfini.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Tony Soprano.
Yeah, we brought that up in the beginning of the show, but it's still shocking no matter how many times I hear it.
Yeah.
51 years young. So, way too soon.
Way too soon. Well, gentlemen, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jim.
It's always a pleasure, sir. Thanks for being on.
Follow him on Twitter at The Fantasy Greek, and the website is thefantasygreek.com. Jim Sarantias, thank you once again for the best hour of our lives.
Thanks, guys. Have a great week.
Yeah, you too.
You do the same.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes, sir.
It's about that time.
It is. I can't believe it's gone by this fast.
We'll see you guys next week, Wednesday nights at 10 o'clock. Don't miss it.
Yeah.
Post-game show is brought to you by Christ, I can't find it. The hell with it.